Welcome back to the deep dive. So we're at that moment in the year, that point in the cycle when it feels like the whole world just sort of pauses, takes a breath, and decides to start over.
It's a collective reset.
It is. And whether you mark that beginning, by the calendar flipping over on January 1st, or maybe by the start of a really profound spiritual season like Ramadan, we use these moments. They can be arbitrary or sacred, but we use them to draw a firm line in the sand.
And we make that promise to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
This time will be different.
Exactly. This time we will build a life that lasts. But, and this is what we're digging into today, what if the way we've been taught to build is just fundamentally wrong?
And that's what's so fascinating about the sources we've gathered for this. They really challenge the very foundation of that whole cultural ritual. The usual advice, the overwhelming noise out there is all centered on setting these huge, ambitious external goals.
Right. It's all about metrics and benchmarks and, achievement.
It's all external.
Yeah. And our mission today is to completely pivot from that. This deep dive is all about 9 really powerful concepts that are rooted in a kind of philosophical and practical wisdom. And they shift the whole conversation away from that external achievement, the goal, and toward building fundamental internal strength.
And setting robust protective boundaries.
Yes. We're essentially exchanging the superficial promise of a goal for the structural integrity of a personal rule set.
It's such a critical and I think a necessary shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Especially for anyone out there who feels just overwhelmed or defeated by that relentless pressure of constant external performance.
A pressure cooker.
It is. And the emphasis here is on deep systemic internal repair before you even attempt to chase those massive objectives.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that the executor of the plan, which is you, the individual, is resilient and sound and whole first.
Because without that,
every single plan is just destined to fail under the slightest bit of pressure. It's building a skyscraper on a foundation of sand.
Okay, I like that. So let's unpack this, the architecture of a new beginning.
Okay.
So we're starting at the first rule, which gives us this really visceral image for how to deal with the past. It's called the calendar analogy.
Right. And it's built around that physical action of tearing off a daily sheet from a calendar, sometimes called a riznama.
For listeners who might not be familiar, you should picture one of those old, maybe a big desk calendar, where you physically tear off a sheet for every single day of the year.
A very satisfying sound.
It is. And on those little sheets, you often find a small snippet of advice, right? A proverb or the wisdom of the day.
And that physical act of tearing it off, it symbolizes the completion, the finality of that 24-hour cycle. You tear it, you crumple it up, you toss it to the trash. That piece of paper represented the day itself, which is, it's transient. It might have had joy, but it just as likely had pain or failure or some kind of hurt.
Okay, but here's where the source material gets really, really psychological. It says people are excellent at discarding the physical calendar sheet. We have no problem with that. But we compulsively keep the pains and the hurts of those past days.
It's a total paradox of human memory, isn't it? We're so good at throwing away the paper, but we struggle so much to discard the emotional residue.
So what are we holding on to?
We hold on to the agony. The source is very specific. It's the residual sting of a failed interaction or mistake that's the torn sheet, instead of just extracting the wisdom.
The wisdom being the lesson.
The lesson, the clear judgment about what went wrong, and crucially, how to avoid it next time. If you didn't manage to get the wisdom on Tuesday, that's fine. Wednesday's a new day, a new sheet of paper, a new opportunity for insight. But the key is to stop accumulating the trash.
And what happens when you do? When you just keep accumulating all that emotional trash day after day?
Well, the danger is that you create what the source calls the shrine of sad memories.
Wow, that's a potent phrase.
It is, because it defines a dedicated emotional space. It means you are actively dedicating your mental, emotional, and psychological capacity to things that are already dead. They're over. They're done with.
It sounds like a perpetual state of mourning. If your internal architecture is built around a shrine to sadness, you're pretty much destined to be sad.
You are. By its very nature, a shrine built of sad memories is inherently miserable, it's depressive, and it's completely fixed in the past. But the purpose of this rule isn't to demand amnesia. That's impossible.
Right, you can't just forget.
You can't. The imperative here is more surgical. You have to extract the lesson or the judgment. That's the wisdom you need for the future. And you discard the residual, useless pain. So if a relationship failed, the wisdom is something like, okay, I need to be clearer about my needs next time.
Right. But the agony is.
The agony is I'm a failure because that person left me. And we confuse the two all the time.
So how does this apply to actual relationships? I mean, especially those from the past that still have this kind of negative gravitational pull on us?
It means you have to separate the valuable influences from the destructive ones. You keep the good people, the positive lessons, but you must actively work to remove the negative ones from your emotional circuitry. And the source is clear. This is incredibly difficult.
It's not easy.
No, the instruction isn't forget. It's more active. It's drop, bury, bid farewell, escort it to its final resting place. And this is the crucial part. Do not visit the shrine.
So every time you mentally revisit that pain, you're rebuilding the monument.
You're laying another brick. The task is to take the wisdom and let the pain die where it belongs, in the past.
Okay, that's powerful. So moving from that, we find another fantastic metaphor for the burdens we carry. This one is less about past pain and more about the useless weights we choose to shoulder. This is tip 6.
Yes, the idea that burdens are only heavy because we believe them to be essential.
And there's an African folktale used to illustrate this.
It's a beautiful story, and it's a perfect mechanism for showing how our deep-seated internal beliefs can completely disconnect us from objective reality. And in the story, it endangers not just the individual, but everyone around him.
The scenario is high stakes, right? A tribe is being attacked by enemies, they're climbing a mountain, and they have to flee quickly. Speed is survival.
Total survival. But there's an old man who is dramatically slowing everyone down. And it's because he insists on carrying this massive, heavy stone.
And the others challenge him. They see him as a risk to the entire group.
Of course. And he explains that his father taught him that carrying this stone maintains his balance. He genuinely, 100% believes that if he throws it away, he will lose his footing and fall to his death.
So for him, it's life-preserving.
It's a life-preserving necessity. But what's crucial here is that the other tribe members know the stone is useless. For him, though, it's based entirely on tradition and this deeply internalized belief. The stone itself wasn't the crippling weight.
It was the belief.
The belief. The conviction that the stone was crucial for his safety, his security, his stability. That was the real burden. His ingrained conviction gave a simple, heavy object this immense, terrifying value. He wasn't afraid of the rock. He was afraid of abandoning the tradition it represented.
So if we translate that to our lives today, we all have our own stones we're carrying up the mountain. What do those look like?
Oh, they take so many forms. They're past events, sure, but also those self-limiting narratives we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, or I'm just doomed to fail. They're emotional anchors to people who left us years ago.
Or obligations?
Yes. Most commonly, I think, it's obligations we feel we must maintain out of guilt or some sense of ancestral loyalty, even when they are actively harming us. The source says these burdens slow us down because we gave them bigger value than they deserved internally.
We're hoarding something emotionally worthless, but we're convinced it's the key to our psychological fortune.
Perfectly put.
How is this different, though, from the calendar analogy? That felt like it was about pain, but this feels different.
It's a subtle but important distinction. You're right. Tip 1 is about letting the pain dissolve. Tip 6 is about letting the weight dissolve by correcting its perceived value. We're terrified to let go of these things because we've convinced ourselves that if we drop this specific anxiety or this grudge or this obligation, we will fall apart.
So if the weight is tied to belief, what's the practical action? Because just telling someone to stop believing in something, that rarely works.
It never works. The source offers a path of correct evaluation. You don't have to throw the burden away immediately. That might be too much. But you must evaluate it correctly. You have to weigh it right.
So you take the stone, you hold it up to the light.
You hold it up to the light, and you ask yourself honestly, is this truly an anchor that stabilizes me? Or is it just a heavy, useless rock that has exhausted its purpose?
That objectivity, that's the key.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Once you see the true small value of the rock, once you realize that throwing it away will bring relief, not ruin, you'll discard it. And you'll do it naturally, without indifference or this huge internal struggle. And that clarity, that is the beginning of real structural self-reckoning.
All right, this next segment gets right to the heart of the whole deep dive. Tip 2 is about replacing traditional goal setting with boundary setting. And the source material starts with this very sharp, I think very necessary critique of our modern obsession with goal setting.
It says, it calls the typical generic sort of internet guru advice cruel and detached. And we really need to understand the context to see why that's not an exaggeration.
Okay, what's the context?
The source is often targeted at individuals in situations where systemic inequality is just rampant. So imagine a young worker who's being told, you have to set 3 aggressive career goals and start your side hustle, when their actual reality is fundamentally precarious.
Let's dig into that precarity, because the source describes it with, almost clinical detail. It paints this picture of working for extremely low wages, often with no insurance, no labor law protection, and this is the critical part, being forced to sign Form 6.
A pre-signed resignation form.
Right, which they sign the moment they're hired.
It's a devastating detail. Signing Form 6 means you are entering employment with a guaranteed immediate exit at your employer's whim. There is zero job security, no safety net. Your entire working life exists under the shadow of instant arbitrary termination.
And that creates an environment of just intense psychological pressure. It's bordering on trauma, really.
It is. So when people in that position are told to just hustle harder and manifest success, it feels like a total callous disregard for their actual lived struggle.
They're being asked to perform these dual duties, financial, psychological, emotional, often supporting an entire extended family, while being constantly pressured to achieve metrics that were designed for people with secure foundations.
Exactly. So the source just dismisses rigid external goal setting in this context as useless talk. Because the immediate problem isn't a lack of ambition, it's a lack of foundation.
You can't ask a person whose boat is constantly taking on water to focus on winning the race.
You can't. They have to focus on patching the holes first. Structural integrity.
So the goal for the year shifts dramatically. It becomes, and I'm quoting here, a year of behavior and a year of rediscovery. How do you even execute a year of behavior instead of a year of achievement?
The substitute for the goal list is building a wall of psychological resilience. That's the term the source uses. Yes, future planning is crucial, and the source even cites the Quranic verse, and let every soul look to what it has presented for tomorrow. But that future planning is conditional.
Conditional on the stability of the planner.
Precisely. The integrity of the planner precedes the effectiveness of the plan. If the person executing the plan is psychologically fragmented, or they're constantly operating from a place of fear, no amount of strategic planning is going to matter.
So this resilience, it's about establishing fundamental internal boundaries.
Yes, self-respect, dignity, character, and this is crucial, renewing faith in your logical, legitimate dreams. Not just the dreams that are manufactured by external pressure. It's about becoming sound and reliable and grounded first.
Okay, so once we commit to building this wall of resilience, we need some blueprints. The source lays out 3 specific boundaries. These are like internal walls you raise against the chaos and toxicity of the external world.
And they're designed specifically to filter that external noise and solidify your sense of self-worth, which is essential to the whole resilience plan.
Boundary 1. Do not give value to people's talk unless it is sincere criticism or genuine guidance. In the age of constant digital noise, that feels like maybe the hardest boundary to enforce.
It's incredibly hard. It requires you to recognize the vast difference between signal and noise. And most people's talk, especially online or in casual conversation, is just noise.
What do you mean by noise?
It's driven by the speaker's own insecurity, their projections, their mood swings, their desire for drama. It's not about your objective reality. Now, if someone offers you actual, specific, constructive guidance from a place of genuine care, you have to listen to that signal.
But everything else?
Everything else is background chatter. You have to learn to treat it like harmless static to protect your focus and your peace. Letting that noise in is a genuine act of self-sabotage.
Okay, boundary 2. Do nothing to please someone else if you are not personally convinced. That is a necessary death blow to the whole people-pleasing culture we live in.
This boundary really is what defines character. If your actions are dictated by the fear of rejection or by seeking external validation, if you're doing something just to make someone else happy while internally you resent it, you are actively sacrificing your self-respect and your dignity.
Conviction has to come first.
It has to. Internal acceptance must come first. If you don't believe in the action, don't perform it. Your internal resentment will eventually betray you anyway.
And then there's boundary 3, which the source presents as both deeply spiritual and a boundary of self-respect. Do not worship anyone but God.
This is the deepest structural wall, and it needs some careful framing. This isn't just a call for religious adherence in a narrow sense. It's an instruction for psychological freedom.
How so?
Well, if goal setting is writing down superficial religious acts, boundary setting is committing to this. I will not give ultimate authority or loyalty to anyone except the one I stand before in prayer.
Why is that freedom?
Because when you grant absolute loyalty to a single highest authority, a boundary that transcends all human whims, it paradoxically grants you ultimate freedom from all other human authorities. You stop worshiping a boss, or a romantic partner, or a celebrity or public opinion.
You stop giving them control over your emotional state.
Exactly. You reclaim your dignity. You stop making yourself small among people.
The Source offers this really powerful conceptualization here. God as a wall of protection and a fortress for flawed people.
And that is so vital. It shifts the entire context. God is described as the Lord of the vulnerable, the sinful, the broken, the disobedient, not exclusively the pure. And what that means is that this boundary, this protection, is accessible even if you believe you are profoundly flawed. You don't need perfection to seek this ultimate protection.
So the only genuine shame then is when your internal standards, your own character, are truly shameful.
Right. The standard we have to set is adhering to commands, whether spiritual or moral, because they are legislated for our benefit. They enforce honor, self-respect, and respect for the rights of others. That moral compass is the ultimate fortress against internal collapse.
Okay, let's wrap up this internal segment with tip 4, which addresses the monumental costs of maintaining a facade of perfection. The mandate for the new year here is just be real, be authentic.
The real problem, the Source argues, is not our imperfection. It's the exhaustive, constant labor required to deny its existence. It identifies a specific psychological disorder, seeing the world or oneself as complete or perfect.
It uses the phrase flashing front and back.
Right, meaning projecting a flawless image from every possible angle.
And the cost of that performance is, it's almost literally infinite.
It's an astronomical psychological tax, and it's paid solely for maintaining this elaborate pretense and constantly fighting to prevent its discovery. We often spend 10 times more energy hiding the flaw, the mistake, the insecurity, the lack of knowledge than we would if we just corrected it or admitted it.
The pretense is the burden.
The pretense is the true weight. Absolutely.
So authenticity requires 2 immediate actions to break this cycle. The first one deals with mistakes and failures.
And it's very direct. If you make a mistake, you must apologize and pay the price for its repair with courage. Full stop. Do not argue, do not insist you are right, do not make excuses. Just own the error, repair the damage if you can, and move on with the lesson learned. This is an act of dignity, not an act of weakness.
And the second action deals with the opposite trap, which is undeserved external praise.
This is equally important, I think. If someone praises you excessively, or they attribute virtues to you that you know you don't truly possess, you have to stop them.
How do you do that without being awkward?
You just thank them for their good opinion and their kind intent, but you humbly admit, I'm less than that, but I'm working on it. The moment you accept undeserved praise, you become a slave to that external image. And the pressure to maintain the facade of perfection just increases exponentially.
So the ultimate lesson here is that the only genuine shame is being a pretender.
Absolutely. Acknowledging your flaws is not an insult. It's the gateway to humility and to growth. The Source even calls flaws required shortcomings. They are necessary because they force us to be humble when we look at ourselves and when we look at others. And that humility is the antidote to that disordered belief in your own completeness, which is always a precursor to a spectacular fall.
Okay, so our focus now is shifting outward to the people who surround us. Tip 3 starts with a really provocative instruction. Set fire to whom? This is all about identifying and dealing with the specific people who drain our energy, our focus, our vitality, and our sense of identity.
And it starts with a focusing exercise. The Source asks, who did you immediately think of? For most people, it's 1 or 2 specific individuals. It's not a broad conspiracy.
That's a crucial clinical distinction it makes, right? If you believe everyone hates you or is draining you, you need therapy for systemic psychological issues.
Right. But if it's 1 or 2 specific people, you need focused, targeted action.
So that's clarity is essential. We're dealing with localized, specific toxicity, not global paranoia.
And we have to treat this toxicity as a genuine health crisis. The Source mentions a study, often attributed to Harvard research on longevity, which suggests that bad, high-conflict relationships are more dangerous to your physical health than smoking.
More dangerous than smoking.
Yes, that they actively compromise the heart's arteries, potentially more severely than Marlboro or hookah.
That comparison is It's shocking. It demands our attention. We tend to compartmentalize emotional stress, but this is suggesting a toxic relationship is a literal physical health hazard.
It reframes the whole issue. It's not a soft emotional problem, it's a hard biological imperative. If a person is genuinely toxic to you, they are actively compromising your lifespan.
The difficulty, of course, is when these drainers are people you can't just physically leave: an internal relationship, a parent, a spouse, a sibling.
Right. And in those cases where physical separation is impossible, the necessary action has to shift to psychological shielding. It becomes about endurance, coexistence, and most importantly, actively trying to neutralize that negative drain.
And the goal is simple.
The goal is simple. Seal the gap through which the person is sucking your energy. You have to go on a severe information diet with them. You limit your exposure to only what's necessary. You refuse to engage in those destructive emotional spirals, and you restrict what personal vulnerabilities you share. You make yourself psychologically impermeable to them.
But what if the draining person is someone you can dispense with? A peripheral friend, a colleague, a distant relative. The source's advice here is brutally practical.
It's unequivocal. A million farewells. The source is very firm that this is not selfishness. You cannot help others. You cannot build your resilience. You certainly can't be a positive force in the world if you are constantly being emotionally and financially bankrupted by someone else.
You can only give from what you have in abundance.
Exactly. So protecting your resources is a moral requirement before it's a personal luxury.
This boundary setting continues with this piece of wisdom that really clarifies that murky area between genuine charity and destructive enabling. We turn to a Buddhist maxim: don't carry on your back the one who doesn't walk on their own 2 feet.
This maxim provides the necessary ethical nuance that so often gets lost in these boundary discussions. It forces us to distinguish between two completely different categories of people and apply the rules selectively. If you apply it universally, you become heartless. If you ignore it, you become an exhausted enabler.
Okay, so let's start with the first group: those who genuinely cannot walk.
The rule is explicitly not for them. Not for the genuinely disabled, the severely financially destitute, the acutely ill, the truly vulnerable. The source says we must help and carry them. And it frames this as a thank you for our own ability to stand.
So it's a moral obligation.
It's a moral obligation, a necessary act of human gratitude and responsibility, acknowledging the random nature of fortune.
Okay, so the rule applies only to the second category: the able but unwilling.
Precisely. This rule is directed squarely at the person who has feet but acts crippled. The feigned cripple. The one who possesses the psychological, professional, or social resources to be autonomous but chooses perpetual dependence. They only take and suck and drain because they have made others responsible for their own inertia.
They've perfected the art of making the rider responsible for the horse's gait.
That's a great way to put it.
So this requires some tough love, framed as self-preservation.
The action mandated is clear. Put down the person who makes writing easy. If someone is continuously manipulating you into being responsible for their basic emotional or logistical existence, when they have the fundamental ability to manage their own life, continuing to carry them is just enabling their stagnation and destroying your capacity to move forward.
The person has to feel the ground beneath their own feet.
They do. If you continue to carry them, you are robbing them of the dignity of their own struggle and the opportunity to develop their own strength.
So we pivot now from specific relationships to the overall environment. This is detailed in Tip 8. And the mandate is profound. Cleanse yourself and buy the expensive, for it lasts. This is all about the soil you plant your clean self in.
And the source uses this brilliant Greek story to demonstrate a harsh reality. That intention and dedicated effort are often utterly defeated by a corrosive environment. It challenges that motivational platitude that sheer will can overcome structural limitations.
Tell us the story.
It's the story of a diligent farmer. He plants the cleanest, purest seed he can find right by the sea. He pours endless effort into its care. He waters it daily, tends to its leaves, protects it from pests. The seed grows beautifully, a testament to his intention and his effort. But eventually, its roots dig deep, past the surface, and they tap into the salty seawater table below. And when the plant finally yields fruit, it's salty, bitter, and completely inedible. All that sincere, diligent effort, wasted.
And the heartbreaking part is that the contamination came from a hidden fundamental flaw in the environment itself.
So if you view yourself as a clean seed, the lesson is immediate and stark. You cannot plant yourself in just any ground. Your soil is your immediate surroundings, your close friends, your community, your workplace culture, the media you consume, the values promoted in your household.
And the contamination is structural and inevitable.
Absolutely. The environment reflects on you deeply. It appears in your speech patterns, your behavior, your accepted values, your reflexive thoughts, your default emotional state. If the soil is corrosive, the fruit will be toxic, regardless of the initial purity of the seed or the exhaustion of the farmer. You will internalize the toxicity simply by drawing nourishment from that source.
There's an added philosophical insight here that really strikes at the core of a lot of self-help culture, which overemphasizes intention.
Yes, the farmer thought his intention and his dedicated effort could change the essence of the surrounding medium. He believed he could overcome the natural law of the environment just by trying harder. But the source emphasizes, it's not by intention or effort, but by origin.
Salt water will always yield salty fruit.
Always. If the foundation is corrosive, your diligent effort to grow will simply result in you absorbing that corrosion faster. Therefore, the essential step for a new beginning is the decision to buy the expensive, to choose high-quality, supportive, clean environments and relationships, even if the cost of moving or changing is high.
This concept of flawed foundations leads perfectly to a Western proverb that's introduced in the source, which reinforces this futility of supporting rotten structures. The wall you leaned on twice will fall on you the third time.
It's a perfect metaphor for applying that soil principle to specific relationships or projects that have repeatedly failed to stand on their own. It demands an economic analysis of your time and your effort. If you are determined to expend monumental effort, you have to be ruthlessly selective about who or what you spend it on.
We often feel this moral obligation to be the pillar, don't we? We become human scaffolding for others.
And this proverb is warning you against it. If the foundation is rotten, if the wall's internal essence is unsound, whether that's a person's lack of self-awareness or a project's fundamental instability, you must stop propping it up. You are meant to spend your entire life, year after year, supporting others every time they collapse because of their own structural issues.
Letting the wall fall is a difficult but necessary act.
Necessary, because it allows the foundation's inherent flaw to finally be exposed. Let it fall so you can move on, or, more redemptively, so the person or entity can finally recognize that they need to fix their own foundation, not rely on external, temporary human supports. Trying to sustain something that's fundamentally flawed isn't loyalty. It's a catastrophic expenditure of your limited life resources.
All right, moving into tip 7, we address the warning against perpetual yet fruitless effort. This is the danger of being intensely busy but achieving nothing of substance, and it uses the powerful analogy of the rabbit caught by the lion.
This illustrates, I think, the most common and most frustrating form of modern failure, running faster than the problem and spending enormous energy, but still succumbing to the exact same outcome year after year.
So the scene is the capture. The rabbit, which is demonstrably faster than the lion, is caught. And when it's asked how this is possible, the rabbit explains that while its speed was great, it was running in the same familiar circle.
Towards its burrow, along the path it always takes.
Exactly. The lion, understanding the rabbit's predictability, simply intercepted it at a predictable pinch point.
The fatal error was speed without a change in direction. Running in itself is not the goal. Effective running is the goal. And we fall into the rabbit's trap when we confuse motion with progress. We keep attempting the same temporary fixes, the same emotional painkillers.
Like what?
A quick shopping spree, a temporary distraction, a superficial change of scene, and the same continuous postponement of, we'll see what tomorrow brings. We always return to the same path of apathy or self-sabotage.
And what does this predictable, cyclical behavior yield over the long term?
Years pass, and we end up in the lion's embrace, facing the exact same material, professional, marital, or social problems we faced the year before. Only now, those problems are larger and more menacing because they've aged and they've festered. The temporary fixes only gave us momentary relief. They never addressed the root issue that drew the lion in the first place.
So what does escaping the circle look like? What's the remedy?
The remedy requires a commitment to radical root solutions. That's the term. If your professional problem is a lack of skill, the root solution is dedicated, difficult learning, not just changing jobs again. If your marital problem is structural conflict, the root solution is deep, uncomfortable communication or professional mediation, not just a romantic weekend away.
You have to stop running in circles and start running out of the circle.
Exactly. By disrupting the familiar, destructive pattern.
Okay, tip 5. This one challenges perhaps the hardest human tendency. blaming external forces, fate, destiny, the day, people targeting me, instead of just dealing with reality as it is.
Confronting fate head-on. The source attacks the futility of complaint with these really pointed examples. Did complaining about the unfairness of the questions in a difficult prep school exam make the teachers cancel the test?
No.
Did wringing your hands about a judge's warning reverse the court's decision? Of course not. Life, the source insists, does not care about your subjective judgment of its fairness.
And the tough realization offered here is that life is not fair. Life is an exam.
And if you think back to your own school days, no student ever found an exam fair. Ever. Even the most diligently prepared student feels the pinch of unfairness. They might rush due to time pressure, misunderstand a crucial question, forget a key formula under duress, or fall ill on the day of the test. They still feel cheated by the circumstances, even if they had agency in the preparation.
It's this confusion between effort and guaranteed results that fuels the complaint, isn't it? We confuse preparation with control.
We believe our sincerity should automatically exempt us from hardship. But the harsh truth is that life is a train, and it's moving. It is not waiting for your subjective emotional judgment. The moment you accept this reality, that the exam is simply the structure you have to operate within, regardless of your feelings about it, you regain the power to act.
So if the train isn't waiting, what is the required psychological action when things inevitably go wrong?
We operate based on known principles. Commitment is better than indifference, recklessness is dangerous, and surprises are guaranteed. If we reach the destination successfully, we show gratitude. If something happens, a surprise, a failure, an unexpected event that disrupts the plan, we immediately recalculate.
Recalculate, that's a cool, rational response.
It's a technical, professional response. You analyze the damage, you assess the remaining resources, you adjust the timeline, and you try again. And you do it without the emotional tax of complaint. The danger to be avoided is standing on the platform, hand fixed to your cheek, wailing about the unfairness of the universe.
Wailing on the platform of fate.
It's useless, it's emotionally draining, and it accomplishes nothing practical. The instruction is clear. Start the new year resolved not to complain or hide, but to deal with reality exactly as it is, endure the pain, and complete the journey.
So we conclude our 9 rules with the most internal, the most essential step of all. Tip 9. Cleanse your heart, you don't need the trouble. This final rule addresses the core human tendency toward external judgment and criticism.
We've spent this entire deep dive looking outward, right? At old burdens, relationships, environments. Now, the high beams have to be turned inward. We, as flawed human beings, are inherently predisposed to seek the flaw outside of ourselves.
We use the high beams on others.
We do. We criticize their flaws, we judge their failures, but we forget to light and clean the interior of our own vehicle, which is the self.
This is why this wisdom is so universal. It cites that classic teaching. Seeing the speck in your brother's eye while completely ignoring the plank, the log in your own.
That is the perfect description of self-deception in action. We need internal breaks of resistance and self-control to force that judgment inward. The imperative isn't to stop being judgmental, it's to be severe with ourselves and merciful with others, which is the reverse of our default psychological tendency.
The proverb about living in a glass house emphasizes that self-knowledge should act as a restraint.
People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. The logic is that deep self-knowledge, knowing your own structural vulnerabilities, should act as a powerful restraint. If you know your own walls are fragile, you should hesitate to attack the walls of others.
But the tragedy, as the source points out, is when our glass house is already broken, shattered by our own shortcomings, yet we still feel entitled to throw the remaining shards at other people.
Our self-deception is so profound that we don't even recognize our own devastation.
To drive this point home, the source taps into this profound, almost frightening wisdom about the sheer magnitude of hidden human flaw.
It emphasizes the reality of hidden human corruption to inspire self-restraint. And you have to consider the implications. If sins had an odor, the sources suggest we wouldn't be able to tolerate being in the same room as each other. If God lifted the veil of secrecy, if everyone's internal state, their private thoughts, their hidden actions were all made visible, no one would dare greet anyone else politely. If we knew what was truly inside the hearts of those around us, the only possible reaction would be fighting with swords, out of sheer horror.
That is a staggering realization of just how fragile our social order is.
It proves that external criticism is an extravagance we absolutely cannot afford. This knowledge has to serve as a profound, humbling restraint, forcing us to recognize that our own internal condition is likely far more precarious and messy than we want to admit. Therefore, the only appropriate focus for our judgment is the self.
So if the heart is like a house, it naturally accumulates logical garbage, the emotional and psychological residues of living. This isn't necessarily sin, but just the byproduct of experience. How do we apply this principle of internal hygiene practically?
Cleaning the heart means actively taking out the trash. It does not mean sweeping it under the carpet, hiding it in the corners of the attic, or pretending it doesn't exist. It requires sincere, focused action and accountability.
This is where that sincere self-reckoning and spiritual renewal becomes so paramount.
You have to schedule a sincere moment of self-reckoning. You look honestly at the things you know are crooked inside you. If those flaws involve other people, an apology and repair are needed. If the flaws are purely internal grudges, jealousy, envy, apathy, then seeking forgiveness is the trash can. It's a genuine, sincere request for the cleansing of that internal residue. And it's a task that has to be done daily, because the house accumulates garbage daily.
And the final warning here beautifully connects back to the structural theme of the whole deep dive, preventing us from using external chaos as an excuse for our own internal mess.
This is maybe the most practical boundary of all. The world is a dirty place. The source acknowledges the widespread chaos, the immorality, the ugliness of society, but the fact that the entire building may be dirty is absolutely no excuse to leave your own apartment dirty.
So you can't let the perceived filth of the surrounding environment justify your own internal mess.
Never. Your ultimate accountability is to yourself and to your higher principles, regardless of the failure of others. You must protect your heart, and you must refuse to give your own shortcomings a convenient external excuse.
This has been an incredibly deep and, I think, really necessary exploration. We've moved through 9 concepts that force a structural pivot away from those external, superficial goal lists and toward foundational internal change.
Yeah, this wasn't about choosing a new productivity system or a new diet.
No, it was about defining foundational psychological limits, choosing quality in our relationships, vetting our environments, and demanding absolute self-honesty.
And we have to always remember the context. The source reminds us that all days are ultimately linked. Saturday is linked to Sunday. December 30th is linked to March 21st. We simply use these cultural markers, the new year, the start of the season, to draw an intentional point, to close a difficult line, and to begin a new story with greater structural integrity.
And you don't need to try and implement all 9 of these rules at once. The resilience comes from commitment, not from volume. Find just one boundary that truly resonates with you. One weight that you realize is useless, or one relationship you know is compromising your health. And let that single action make your coming life fundamentally better than the past.
So as you move forward, here's the final provocative thought for you, the learner, to carry with you. We focus relentlessly on doing new things, new habits, new tasks to change our lives. But based on these rules, which of these crucial boundaries, psychological, social, or spiritual, is the one thing you need to stop doing to finally reach a root solution? What burden of belief are you carrying that is currently slowing your ascent up the mountain? Think about that and begin your year of structure.